Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today, Luke. So excited to have you on the podcast because you're a coach in the Irish industry that is, very well educated. You put a really good content, and it seems as well that like the approach you have to coaching is it's bullshit free, it's evidence based, but it is it's extremely like kind of I guess it's health oriented, and
Yeah.
it's sustainability oriented, and I really like that because in an industry like we have where there's so much, 6 week challenge, 75 hard, these
Bullshit.
short term fixes, stuff that like people end up like, starting coach with somebody, then finishing up and like feeling that they haven't really kind of achieved much, maybe a transformation picture and that's it, and then they're back to square one. I think like people like yourself like are obviously like leading examples in the industry. So really happy to have you on. And I guess the first thing I'm gonna ask you is how the fuck did you get into the industry?
First off, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm delighted to be asked to come on. It's great. You're someone I followed as well, with your powerlifting, bodybuilding, all that stuff. Transition from triage to strength by story. Is it strength by story?
Story strength coaching. It's just like
Story strength coaching. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, my kind of I suppose elevator pitch or how I got into the industry is I was overweight when I was younger, out of shape, got personal training, got relatively in shape. Not relatively in shape, but I got lost weight, let's say. Then made a transition into competing in martial arts for a while, played rugby when I was younger, but through just, I suppose, me getting into fitness, developed a bit of a passion for that, naturally as you do. And then I, as part of my degree in college, had to do placement, did my placement in a gym. So my degree was a management degree, did my placement in a gym, got offered a job on my last day there. I was a personal trainer, in-person trainer, and taught classes. I taught a great spinning class, but yeah, playlist is banging. But I taught classes and I did in-person PT for about 2 years. And in the meantime, back in the day on Snapchat, which I only recently found out is still a thing, I was putting out a lot of free content like Q&As and just trying to really pump out as much content as I could to help people. And like kind of just starting on Instagram, but mainly Snapchat at the time.
Mm.
Um, what actually kind of, I suppose, at the time there was a few gyms in Cork that were doing certain protocols that I kind of called out. I went down that route, do you know, like that, which is again
Oh yeah.
popular and does the rounds of like calling other shit out, which I agree and disagree with at times. I wouldn't do it now, to be honest with you. But it was something that like got more eyes, and then as a result of that, I got approached by a company here in Cork to be in charge of their nutrition for their clients. So it was a gym, but they were offering kind of an online service as part of the gym. So I was quote unquote head of nutrition for them
Mm.
for about 2 years. And then after I was there for 2 years, I started my own business, which is Integrative Health, which was 6 years ago. So yeah, I'm in the fitness industry 10 years now, which is frightening to say.
Okay. You started your current business in the last 6 years, but previous to
Yeah,
that you're working okay as PT and with
yeah.
was that what they call excellence?
Exceed,
Something like
exceed.
exceed. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They then
yeah.
had
Because
a PT course called Excellence, I think. Yeah, but their business name was Exceed.
yeah, man, like I remember when I was getting into the industry because like we got into the industry around kind of similar times. So
Yeah.
again, when I would have been, this would have been before I started PTing. Like a lot of people I knew, like obviously Gary was like one of them, and then there's like Adam McDonald, and Snapchat was the thing they were leveraging, like because Instagram stories weren't the thing,
No,
and putting
no.
out free content there, and that it's funny how things have like kind of evolved like over like the
Mm.
last couple of years with that, and it's funny though that some of the same stuff that was useful for I guess kind of growing, I mean an audience is still so relevant now. So as you mentioned, like you did some like kind of call outs and kind of
Yeah.
picking apart some bullshit, and like that's obviously a massive way to grow an
Yeah.
audience now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I'd say it causes a lot of stress though at the same time. Um, so I guess like at what point did you make the kind of switch to from the PT to online? Like how, because that's something that I guess a lot of personal trainers want to do, or some people who want to get into fitness industry want to do is make the switch or just make the jump into online coaching straight away.
Yeah.
And then, of course, yeah, PT's looking to make the switch to online coaching. But like, was there any kind of skill set that like you got from like PT that kind of like helped you in the online space? And tell us about that journey.
So my like again, a lot you see a lot of PTs these days, and they want to make that transition because obviously online is more quote unquote scalable for income, for impact, and true impact income,
Hmm.
through reaching a larger demographic, working with different people. My transition, I suppose, is a bit different because I got approached by that business, and they were like, "Look, we want you to come on board for coaching nutrition." So it wasn't like this gradual transition. It was literally like, right, I finished PT on a Wednesday, I'm fully online on Thursday, which
Mm.
was it was actually really hard because it like I mean obviously when you're going from a client coming in and you bring them to a session, you have the program made out, you're coaching them in person. I wasn't a coach at the time, I was a PT. I would classify those as very different things. I was literally just counting reps and encouraging people,
Mm.
so and making absolutely senseless conversation. But I was doing PT and then just straight away transitioned online. And one thing I've always said is that I actually didn't enjoy my time personal training, to be honest. I don't think I capitalized on it as much as I should have. And if I were to go back now, I would have invested more in my own education to enjoy it more, to actually coach, not just count reps, to
Mm.
actually see more meaningful results, to have better systems in place, and to get more gratification from the clients. I now only get that through coaching from the systems I have in place and through my ethos and means for which I coach. But one thing that definitely stood to me that is really is I think transitions to online is developing good empathy and communication skills. So being able to understand someone's emotions, being able to help someone um in black and white on email, on WhatsApp, whatever it is, on a Loom. I think you develop better understanding of people and communication skills as a personal trainer, and I think that massively helps in online. So that's why I think having quote unquote skin in the game as a personal trainer on a gym floor and being able to reach out to people and being able to be a bit hungry for clients and go through a period where you don't know what you're doing and you're saying stupid shit and you pretend like you know what you're doing actually pays off and helps you in an online setting as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think something you said at the very beginning of that too, actually, like it really rings true with me too. I don't think I capitalize on my time as a personal trainer as much either. Like the amount of like education that like you both of us would have done from then to now,
Mm.
I think we'd be far more effective at the job, right? Like somebody who like who I really like look up to is probably Paul Standell because he
Yeah,
still does like in person training too, to just a couple of sessions a week just to keep himself sharp. But like when I was personal training, I didn't know a ton about like biomechanics.
yeah,
I had a very kind of limited skill set when it came to like how people move or even kind of regressing, progressing exercises. I just had like less tools really to
yeah,
like help people, and it's something that like now that I'm older now and like I've been like working online and I've seen like the pros and cons of working as an online coach. I'm like I wouldn't mind doing a couple of sessions of like PT a week, and I like even talking to other coaches who like have the facilities, maybe they've got a home gym for example, to like take on in person like clients, they still do it because again it just keeps your skills sharp and ultimately at the end of the day, it does help your coaching online. As you said, the empathy, the way you develop like empathy for people when they're having struggles, your ability to communicate, like kind of read emotions, body language, all this type of stuff. And if you are able to combine online with in person, you just, like maybe do a session with that person every week and like once a week or every 2 weeks or something like that. And then alongside that, you're still doing the likes of check-ins and kind of have an oversight of like the rest of their like habits, behaviors. That person is going to probably exceed like far more than somebody who just comes in online, maybe has never done any type of like in-person training before. Because I do think online coaching can be a hard place to begin for somebody who's just in the door of the gym. In person is probably a lot kind of easier to kind of just get the flow of how to even perform like a squat or a leg press because like as you know, like even something as simple as a leg extension you can kind of fuck it up. So and I guess that's like one thing that you mentioned is there as well, like you would define like being a PT and a coach differently. So like in your own words, how would you kind of differentiate the two?
Well, when I was a PT, like the client would come in and I'll put my hands up and say I was not the best PT. Like I definitely was not. I wish I did have the skills, knowledge, and experience I have now when I was training. But obviously I was just getting into the industry. It was my
Mhm.
pathway to get to where I am now. But as you said, like in terms of coaching, in terms of, going through a movement, just like oftentimes the gym was busy, you'd just pick filler exercises to fill the session, which is really bad to do. The programming wouldn't be correct. Um, the gym that I worked in a commercial gym, so I wasn't fully in charge of the systems. I wasn't like freelance by myself. So the client would come in and they could train with one trainer one week and one trainer the next.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so it like again that style of system wouldn't be, obviously it's not practical.
Yeah.
It's not a good way to do it. But how I differentiate a PT and a coach is a PT. The best, I can't remember where I've seen this before. I don't know, was it on Muscle Nerds League Gleeman or something? But it was like a PT looks after you for 1 hour a day. The coach looks at the other 23 as well. So a PT will look at your sets, your reps, your breakdown. Some PTs won't even do that. They won't. But like a coach will guide you much further. It's more in depth. It looks at the broader picture, and it's kind of like going from mile wide, inch deep to mile deep after inch wide.
Mm.
You begin to dig a bit deeper after things.
Yeah. And it's something I guess like they teach you when you are doing like a personal training cert. Like
Mm.
they really hammered into you that like, you're qualified here to teach exercise. Like, you're not qualified to do nutrition, you're not qualified to help people with like, kind of mental struggles or stuff like that. But, when you're working as an online coach, you kind of take on a lot of those responsibilities. Like you do need to have like a deeper skill set to like handle all this stuff because it is meant to be all encompassing. I think like for me anyway, I think that's maybe somewhere where um people can be a little short sighted when they do get into or when they're thinking about getting into online coaching. Again, as you said, it looks scalable, looks like you can make more money, looks like you can have more freedom, all this kind of stuff. It's all great and all, but at the same time, you know, have to be effective at your job, or else you'll never get any of those things. You can't
I mean,
scale.
statistically speaking as well, like if you look at the amount of inquiries you get for people, if you were to look at the amount of people that currently do personal training and transition to online and get results, or like everyone knows someone that does PT but doesn't
Mm.
get the result. And often chances is, and I do these inquiries all the time in consultations, I'm sure you do too, their nutrition is letting them down. They're not looking at their sleep. They're not managing their stress. Their digestion is off. They haven't taken a shit in a week. They don't drink enough water. All of these things. So when you start to get that package together, which is what coaching is. You look at the overall broader picture. You combine coaching with training, volume, exercise selection, nutrition, supplementation, whatever it is, the results exponentially go up. So that's why often when people and have maybe that fear of transitioning, that like maybe it's viewed as like a lesser service of like personal training to online coaching, that maybe I won't get as good results. But from what I've often seen,
Mm.
I don't know if you see it as well, people get better results. I'm not trying to steer people away from personal training, but people
Yeah,
get better results because they take on board everything together.
yeah, yeah. I definitely do agree. Like ultimately, if your goal is like to gain muscle or gain strength, like your training is going to be like the most like straightforward way of you getting there. And if you can spend like 6 months to a year with a personal trainer and like they're a decent personal trainer, like they're pushing you to lift heavier each week, like they're looking at your technique and like trying to get to improve, and like maybe they are going to give you some little bit of kind of word advice on the side of like how to manage outside the gym. But if you spend 6 to 12 months with that personal trainer and you move to somebody who's non like somebody who works online and has like the skill set that you need to like kind of overcome the deficits that you have, whether that's nutrition, whether that is maybe some type of like self-sabotaging mindset or something like that, like it is going to massively help you level up. Like again, I think something like I've got two coaches, and I think that just something that helps me to stay on the course is just having the check-ins. I know what to do and know how to do it, but just like having that little bit of accountability there, like it just helps me to just like dial in a little bit more. I had a question that I was going to kind of mention there. So like in regards to just that transition from like Lam the PT to Lam the coach, like how did you level up?
I suppose the best way I could put it is I started to see what it was giving me back, about giving the bare minimum, how it was giving me things back. Like, some bit of financial stability, satisfaction in my job. Like where before as a personal trainer, I worked as a courier when I was in college. And what I used to do is get up in the morning, go in and deliver letters to solicitors, and then go back in after college, collect letters for solicitors, and then at the time I also worked as a waiter in a yacht club, so I'd go down and I'd wait tables. So like, I mean, I hated every bit of it. So when I
Mm.
liked what I did and when I actually saw I could make an impact to someone and it was paying me better, I was like, okay, well, I'm hardly just going to stop here. I'm just going to keep investing into seeing. And I suppose a big thing for me as well is that I really, really hated not being able to know the answer to something. Now, obviously, we have to know our limit in terms of like if someone has, I don't know, a really bad winged scapula or their leg is hanging off. Okay, I'm not going to try to tell you what supplement to take. But if someone came, when someone, like a big thing for me is when I transitioned into coaching, like I kind of not got known because that sounds really like arrogant, but like I was more in, I suppose, known for, let's say, nutrition, the nutrition guy. Oh yeah, Lam, the nutrition
Yeah.
guy. So that kind of annoyed me in a way because it provided a big gap that people didn't know that I coached training as well. So I spent literally
Mm.
2 years going all in on programming, biomechanics, functional hypertrophy, everything. And I tried to pump out a lot of content associated with that. Then from there came the seminars that we ran ourselves because I got known as the like nutrition guy, or people were like, "Oh, you're the guy who does nutrition." I've literally gotten inquiries like that, and it really got to me because it was just completely disregarding another huge part of the service that I was doing but not fully confident in. So that made me realize, right, there's a gap here that I'm not either being known for or I need to start investing more into.
Yeah, I definitely can feel a little bit of that. I do a lot of nutrition coaching for a lot of powerlifters, but I do have some who do train for sure. I need to probably post more about my programming, my knowledge because I was spent the fucking enough on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really good point there in regards to like how I guess you didn't what you wanted to no longer kind of pigeonhole yourself or have yourself like hold a certain niche to help more people. Um, because I think that's an important part of like growing as a trainer, right? Like I don't know what your opinions on like niching down are. Like, do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, so that's actually a good one. We did one of the last coaching blueprint seminars we did, I did a presentation on niche markets and I
Mm,
put up a list of the clients that I was coaching at the time. And they're like, it was everything from like Irish track athletes to men's physique to high rocks athletes to relationship with food to building muscle, dropping body fat, newbies, older clients. And I literally had a question mark, where is the niche? So, in my
mm,
opinion, I think you have to start off getting into the fitness industry by narrowing down your niche. But I also think that's to the detriment of a lot of coaches that they do that too much. Like you see these things online. I'm looking for 5 female teachers who are 5'10" and who love cats, who want to lose 6.4 pounds in 8 weeks. Do you know, it's like
yeah.
there's a niche, but if you play in on that too much, I think you actually limit your potential of skills of who you can help. Like one of the ways I began to diversify my client base, who is hugely diversified right now from like so many different backgrounds, sports, goals, is if I started to see my client base go one particular way, whether that be body composition, whether that be fat loss, whether that be relationship with food, whatever it was, I'd start pumping out content. Even if I didn't know it, I'd research and try to learn about it. If I did know it, I'd start pumping out content associated with a demographic or niche I wanted to attract. And then that would
Mm.
naturally bring about some organic, maybe traffic that I wanted to inquire about, start those conversations. And that then brought in a bit more clients. Once you get more clients from that organic traffic, then I started to get some results, whether that be testimonials or physical, then start putting those out there to provide some social proof on top of the content that provided some value that further fed into organic traffic that was coming in.
Mm. Yeah. I think like having a bit more of a kind of generalist approach to coaching can be really, really powerful, like to grow as a coach,
Mm.
because I mean, if you have bigger interests, you're going to learn about more things that can help ultimately more people, but your knowledge is far more applicable in so many different kind of contexts. I think uh, if like all you're kind of looking at is like just like pure bodybuilding work, if some of your clients decide to, I don't know, kind of pivot into, I don't know, could be endurance, for example, and you still want to help them, maybe like you enjoy working with them as a client, they want your help because they enjoy the relationship you have as a coach. Or like if you have some type of like if you spend some time actually kind of leveling up in that kind of arena, it will definitely help. Or even with the likes of like nutrition, for example, like there is going to be different between like kind of maybe coaching somebody for a bodybuilding show for sure in regards to how you're going to get them to be extremely strict with like certain kind of macros or like certain amount of meals per day. But then if that person is looking to like transition to more kind of intuitive approach, but all you know is how to coach them with MyFitnessPal, and you don't have any kind of ideas to like how to move away from that for yourself as a coach, well, that's going to be something else that's going to kind of limit your skill set, So having a more kind of generalist approach almost allows you to specialize too, like later on down the line, because you kind of have a big kind of overview of things.
Yeah, I think you
Um,
have to start off narrowing down on a niche, but not too much. And I think through that, then
yeah,
you can earn the right to become a generalist. But the generalist is only done, you can only earn your right to become a journalist if you invest in the education into the areas you want to help people improve upon. Maybe what can help as well is kind of doing some of it yourself. Like I'm sure you wouldn't be trying to help bodybuilders or powerlifters if you weren't doing that yourself, as I wouldn't be trying to help Hyrox athletes, endurance athletes, or anyone with body composition if I haven't done it myself. So there has to be some element of
mm,
maybe providing a social proof to yourself, which it incentivizes the client to have buy-in on top of social proof for other clients. But actually investing into the education, not just pretending you knowing what you're on about.
mm. Yeah, I think like it's important as a coach to have buy-in to your client's goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be excited. Like you wouldn't have that like big range of diversity like within your client base if you weren't generally interested in helping them to achieve that goal. It's not as if like you're just like, yeah, I want to fucking be a pickleball athlete. Yes, I'll sign you up because I need the money or something like that, right? It's like you're generally like curious and invested in helping that person achieve their goal,
Yeah.
and excited by maybe the challenge if it's something that you haven't come across before. It's like,
That's
okay,
it.
this is a gap in my skill set. Here's something that I can improve upon, and
Mm.
maybe that information you learn maybe it kind of only suits one person, one client, right? You can think of people who like on your coaching team who maybe have medical conditions, but like somebody else comes into the fray, or that person gets a great result, and you put out a testimonial, and they're like, "Oh, I've got this genetic thing that, like, maybe mom helped me with, like, nobody else could help me with." And then
Mm.
somebody else like, "Oh, I feel seen, heard, recognized, and maybe I could get supported by this person here too." So
Yeah.
just that little bit of like effort, I guess, on the part of a coach
Yeah.
can really help with like kind of growing the business there.
Mm. Absolutely. That's actually one of the things I have down in when I send out like a client's intro pack at the end. I literally put it in purposely. I put in writing your goals and are my goals. So if you show like that, it again, rule number one of how to attract clients and actually do well in this industry is just give a shit. If you give a shit and don't
Yeah,
be a dick, you get a long way.
yeah, for sure. Like at the end of the day, it's meant to be like a relationship where like you're pushing the other person to achieve their goal.
Yeah.
And I think if the energy isn't there, like at the outset of that, like the enthusiasm for the coach's part, it can leave the client feeling very like unsupported.
Of
And even
course.
when they're maybe having like the harder weeks, or they're facing the struggles that maybe like they've told you about in their questionnaire, and you don't have the kind of same drive, whether that's the push motivation or just like you haven't done your kind of homework and what can help them.
Yeah.
The the person then might start to lack the effort in the plan, right? But more so coming from the coach's perspective, because we haven't actually kind of spurred them on or kind of
Yeah.
provided them with the resources to help them kind of push forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think you have to you I mean, I think that that's a good point, but it can be taken too far by some clients as well, as I'm sure you know. Like they
Yeah.
expect you to be motivated and want it more than them. And I think you need to want it
Mm.
equally as much, but if it comes to a point where you want
Yeah.
it more than them, then that's where the issues arise.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. If the coach wants it way more than you do, it's gonna be a frustrating process on both people's parts.
But you see this all the
Um,
time in coaching of like coaches pushing their clients to do shows, photo shoots so that
yeah,
they can get the before and after, or they can get the testimonial, but maybe it's against the client's both will and desire, which is not ideal.
yeah, that does go on in the industry quite a bit, and I think, yeah, I guess it just comes down to the coaches putting their own goals against like what the client is like. Say for example, right? I have in the last few years started taking on more powerlifting specific clients. I've got like my first two people on stage last year. I would like to get on more. I have some
Mm,
people on my team who like to train like bodybuilders,
mm.
but I'm not telling them right next year prepping.
Yeah,
Next
yeah,
year where the show dates are out. Let's start looking at them.
yeah.
Because I think especially for goals like those, like whether it's a photo shoot or yeah, photo shoot and probably bodybuilding pressure, probably like the two, I guess, most detrimental ones that you could probably push somebody towards. Really,
because
like
the
I mean, if you're
repercussions
push,
are so much higher.
yeah, because like I guess I guess it could be seen as more of a flex because Instagram is so visually based, like
Mm.
um, like somebody could run like do an unbelievable like have an unbelievable like performance in a high rocks event, but because it's not as visual as like some person up on a bodybuilding stage being absolutely jacked at their mind, it's probably not
Yeah,
going to garner as much of a kind of a attraction. And then I
yeah,
guess if like me as a coach decides to put how I want to be perceived and potentially kind of engage in some kind of shoddy business practices and push clients towards that, that could be number one, the person could have a fucking terrible time during that prep. At the back end of it, they could be quite damaged from a perspective of the relationship of food, relationship of body, fucking relationship with exercise or the process
mm,
in general. And I walk away with like a nice picture, and I'm like, right, I've got 5 more spaces for bodybuilders next year.
yeah,
And then that's not even bringing into the case of people who get drugs pushed upon them, which
yeah.
I've
That's
talked
another
to people
conversation,
about
also, I
in
suppose.
in
Yeah,
in, in consultations before too. So I think that's probably like just one thing as well for coaches who are listening is don't it's okay for you to want goals for
yeah,
your kind of business and like the people that maybe over time you want to kind of gravitate towards and like more kind of accolades you want for yourself as a coach, but it can't be something that you really force because again
yeah. Like even
you,
I suppose to relate on that note, like I had a client that checked in out this morning, and she's currently on week 8. She had a lot of poor beliefs and behaviors around food. Like one would say disordered eating, not an eating disorder diagnosed, but maybe on the way to it if it continued. So like every waking moment of her day thinking about food, couldn't stop, fearing social occasions, just again, I've been there before, I'm sure you have, maybe after a show or something, or you've definitely dealt with clients where literally every move of their day is constantly revolved around food, and it's consuming. So, I mean, we both agree that okay, but see, it's a catchy one because she's also feeling really uncomfortable with herself right now. So she wants to get leaner, but
mm,
she hasn't really earned the right to do that within a sustainable and enjoyable fashion for which to mean she wants to live. So I suppose, agreement with her or my process with her is to work on her not total relationship with food, but her behaviors around food right now to put her in a more solid position to work her way to get leaner so that she feels more comfortable herself. Whereas her intended solution was to just diet to solve the issue, where that was actually
mm,
feeding the problem. So like she checked in today and she was saying, look, I'm delighted with how my relationship with food is. She went out last weekend, didn't, binge or overeat afterwards and all that stuff. Great improvements all around, not constantly thinking about food, not losing control. But then she did follow up by saying, but I'm still feeling comfortable myself, so can we drop down calories? So after us going back and forth, and I was saying, like, look, I know that in my gut right now, if you want to get there quicker, yeah, we can drop, but we're not going to. I was like, because I know it's not going to be in line with where you told me you want to be based on your previous challenges. So that's where I suppose sometimes you have to, and this is something I've been guilty before, that like when it comes to, I would have been maybe beating around the bush a bit too much to push physical results of people. So I might have like been
mm,
hesitant to drop calories or hesitant to push cardio or hesitant to, get people training to a closer proximity to failure. Probably been a bit too soft in my end. Whereas I think sometimes as coaches, we need to put we need to keep like an absolute every decision we make with true like integrity and true ethics, of course. But sometimes
yeah.
we might have to push our own biases to the side to have the client keep that buy into achieving results for which they signed up. Because if I kept saying to that girl, no relationship with food, relationship with food, relationship with food, eventually she will get to a point if she's not seeing any change. Okay, fuck you, I'm going to sign up with someone else. He's going to diet me harder. I'm going to get leaner, but I'm still going to have the same issues.
Mm. Yeah, it's trying to kind of straddle the line of giving the person what they want and kind of giving them what they need, which is probably some of the hardest parts about coaching because I guess sometimes as coaches you can feel like if you kind of push back against somebody's kind of goal, which maybe as you said they might not have the kind of right to do or right to
Mm,
pursue at the moment, they're just not in a position to do it in a way that would kind of give them the best success to get there, but also in the aftermath with like with sustaining that result, it can be hard to tell the person like that, like it's just not right to pursue it right now, and that we should probably
Yeah.
spend time doing something else.
Especially when someone is feeling like quite uncomfortable in themselves and they want to feel better, and
Yeah,
it because like again they what they perceive is the solution to get to where they want to be feeds the issue for why they're not there now.
yeah, and then as well the kind of fears you mentioned there, where they could always just say, "Well, I didn't sign up for this. I'm going
Yeah,
to move to
exactly. And
somebody
this
else."
this
You
goes
know?
in, I suppose, if you're to get into like marketing or business, or if you're to look at the industry as a whole and zoom out and look at lens, this is like something when you look at these relationship with food coaches, which is someone who maybe might not be fully qualified in clinical psychology or actually CBT or whatever it is, but they don't want to build their brand around aesthetics. So they kind of meet in the middle and they help
Mm,
people improve their relationship with food, which is great. But then sometimes maybe they also try and push aesthetics. They kind of ebb and flow between these kind of two different niches per se. I think if you try and focus all in relationship with food, you'll struggle. Like this kind of not this woke kind of body positivity move. I'm not going that far with it. But if you constantly say about self love and all this stuff, and these kind of messages that are out there and body positivity and all that stuff, I think if you push that too much, you will struggle to get physical results with clients, and you
yeah.
will struggle with your business. And I think if you push hard physical results too much, you will also struggle with your business, and your clients will struggle.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's when you're going into a diet or like you're going into a gain phase, like it's and it's something I will always kind of like just like let people know ahead of time, especially people who are maybe kind of newer to it, first diet or first gain phase or something like that, is they're gonna try to tell them up front of like how they're gonna feel when they start to struggle, like what that's going to look like. It might be a little bit softer, they might a little bit be a bit fatter, might not look how they might their body image may not be like a 10 out of 10 and just feeling amazing every single day.
Yeah,
But just letting them know that like up front and just being aware of it, and maybe giving them some like just helpful practices to like, navigate it. Like for females, it's a very common, right? And the best thing for them is to do like some type of like gaining phase where like they're increasing calories, increasing body fat. I think it's a phase where so many, God, I'd say 90% of females who come to me for fat loss, they
yeah,
actually don't need fat loss. They
yeah,
they need time gaining weight. But like just letting them know like ahead of time, and then kind of reaffirming like that process in the check-ins can be quite useful. And again, same a lot of times, like even guys on the way down, they're like, oh, I don't want to go below this certain weight.
yeah.
They're like 10 kilos overweight, and they only want to lose two. you
Yeah,
know,
I know.
and,
Yeah, and it's like
they're like,
this
oh,
attachment to metrics that have absolutely no influence, unless it's
yeah,
a weight-based category. But like, I think you made a good point
yeah,
there. Like, I remember because I coach a lot of other coaches as well, and one of my females, she's in UAE, and she she went through a long gaining phase where like every week she really struggled. Like she was like, "Oh, I just don't feel good, don't feel good." And I was trying to say to her at the time, "Look, just sit with it for now." I was like, "This will pay off. Sit with it for now." And she still says to me to this day, like she transitioned into high rocks and CrossFit, but this is when she was prepping for photo shoots and wanted to build some tissue. We went through lengthy gaining phase, obviously as females have to, and she still says to me this day that she's now a coach. This helps her with her coaching clientele to relate to
mm,
them of just sitting in that moment and kind of, I suppose an important point is appreciating her body at different points as well, noticing her performance, noticing a bit more social flexibility, having calories a bit higher, a bit more food diversity when calories are higher, and looking at where it offers her some value and benefits outside just a lower body fat.
mm. Yeah. I think about like important part of the coaching process, like while we will get people to go through like dying phases, gain phases, but almost like to read de-emphasizing the important, like the gravity of them over time.
Mm,
Like I almost like say to people now that like there's like the time where we're doing our fat loss phase, but then there's just the other time where we're just not dieting. We're just
yeah,
not calling it dieting. We have a different focus,
yeah,
because I think like it's so, like it's come from like the bodybuilding world that people just think they have a binary approach. If I'm not dieting, I'm bulking, and like it's either one of the two, and like anything else like that is like making my body weight stay in the same place. It's just like not worth doing. Whereas as you said there, like towards the end, like like she learned to appreciate her body, and I think that's something that like people just don't really kind of get the opportunity to do because they just set the goal of like of aesthetics or weight based like that weight based targets. And like ultimately if you're going to be doing this for the next like 50, 60 years until you're fucking like no longer able to walk, well, maybe hopefully from doing weight training up to your 90 you're still able to walk, but like but up in that point, like do you think at like 80 years old when you're like fucking, I don't know, just all wrinkled as fuck, you're gonna be like, I look fucking sick compared to what I look like when you're 30.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. This is
you're gonna have to shift the view from the
exactly.
aesthetics because your body's just going to change over time, even if you do keep up a lot of this stuff.
And this is something I always try, and that kind of that way you frame that is something I really try and use with people when I'm getting them away from tracking my fitness pal. Because obviously there's going to be that barrier. So like I have like let's say a systematic approach how I get someone tracking, and I have a systematic
Hmm.
approach how I get someone away from tracking. And eventually, or sorry, not eventually, but usually when I broach that idea of come away from tracking, you're met with a bit of anxiety, a bit of panic because people have so much of this attachment of control. So one of the ways I kind of frame it is, okay, well, do you know any 50, 60, 70 year olds that track their food on my fitness pal? And I'm hoping that most of the time the answer is no, unless there's some absolutely jacked 50, 60, and 7 year olds out there that are tracking their food. And it's like, okay, well, if we're playing the long game here, where hopefully we are, you need to learn how to
Mm.
control your food without an app or PDF in your pocket. And you need to learn how to make intuitive choices without getting anxious if you don't know the exact measurement of it. Or if you go around to your aunt's house and she cooks you a stew, but you don't know how many grams of potatoes in it. And you don't know how to judge it by eye because you've never practiced it away from an app where you have scales out. So like reframing the let's say beliefs around where you playing the long term of where you want to be and your outcome, I think helps sometimes kind of shift that anxiety and stress related for it.
It's yeah, it's the long term thing that people suck with most of the time. Is it's just like
Yeah.
we know what we want to look like this summer, but we don't know what we want to look like in 10 years time. We don't know where we want to be in 10 years time. But I guess pretty much everybody who's listening to this podcast would probably agree. You probably want to be alive in 10, 20, 30
Oh,
years, and
good
you probably
idea.
want yeah, you probably want to be in like good health too.
Mm,
Like I was talking to a client there yesterday, who's signing back up, and kind of struggling a little bit with like nutrition, was competing at a pretty high level in powerlifting, and because they're not competing as much, they don't really feel as if they have the same motivation to have their habits and behaviors kind of reflect what it'll be like when they're prepping. And
mm,
yeah, that's something I said was like, well, in 10, 20, 30 years you're still gonna be going on holidays, you're still hopefully gonna be around for your kids, for your family. Like, what do you want that to look like? Do you want it to look like, you know you being like fed medication? Do you want to be in and out of hospitals? Do you want it to be like still independent? I think
mm.
that's anybody, like most people who listen to podcasts probably know someone in your life who is at the age of like having lost their independence, like they're old. Like, we got my granny who's in a nursing home at the moment. She used to be very independent, but now she can't really kind of look after herself anymore. uh, and just when you go visit those people and you kind of see like how life is now, and you're just like, oh, I don't want that to be me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what precautions have you got in place right now? Because
yeah.
ultimately, now is the best time to put the precautions in place. It doesn't have to be crazy either. Like, it doesn't have to be, again, taking like all your advice from like fucking high level bodybuilders or fitness influencers probably isn't the way. Um, it's, hopefully, you'd be coming from like people like myself or Luke
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is it. Like, I mean, it's so easy to get short-sighted in this industry into all that shit, and it's so hard to zoom out at times to make it like reflect back on right, why am I doing this or where am I going when you have a day where you overeat or a day you undereat. And this is why, like, even with the checking system I use when a client does have a day that inevitably does go wrong, which happens very frequently, and it's something I kind of look forward to in a way because a lot of learning is done there. I kind of look at the
Mm.
weekly average of like if a client overeats and look at the weekly average, like how much of a little influence it has, and reframe it on a bigger picture that it really is so insignificant in the grand scheme of things in accumulation of what you do on averages.
Mm. Yeah, I think in those instances too, like I'm the same. I'm sure a lot of other coaches, no matter how much they say that all their clients have great weeks and all the team is killing it. I see you post that on your story before. Um,
Yeah, I've
like
never
no
had a week where
matter,
the team is always good.
yeah, 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 same. there's always some struggles, but like that's the fucking point. I think like
Yeah.
the point of coaching is not to like it's to help, I guess, reduce the amount of kind of days that you have where you feel like you're kind of falling flat on your face. But
Mm.
on the days where you fall flat on your face, it's a spur you on to say, okay, cool, like that happened, let's keep going. You know,
Yeah.
versus if you're kind of a lot of times what people are doing it on their own, it's classic all or nothing, black or white thinking, or like, you know, once they meet an obstacle, it's like, you know, I'm sure you've had it in consultations. It could be great. It could be great at training, great at my nutrition, but then I have like a weekend, and then I don't go to back to the gym or eating well for another month.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, uh,
And they make that
like,
become a representation of their entire process and progress then as well. And like, I've used this a lot with clients. Is like, I had a client, and yesterday he, crashed his car. He had a stressful week, and things didn't go to plan. His food was off. He dropped a bit of weight that he didn't want to drop because his goal is to gain a bit of muscle. Um, so again, he got short sighted in the week and thought that he kind of wrote things off. And I was like, okay, so if you knew someone who was morbidly obese, smoked 20 fags a day, didn't go outside the door, but they drank 2 liters of water and ate a few salads and started crying that they weren't shredded, that would sound ridiculous. He was like, yeah, that would sound ridiculous. But I was like, this is the exact same thing in reverse. And I was like,
mm,
every week you're consistent with your training. Every week you smash your food. Every week you're on top of things. And you've had a few days where you haven't had things together. How can you let that become representation of the 14, 15 weeks work you've put in? When you when you say it like the opposite, it's like, oh, that's ridiculous. But it's the exact same thing in reverse. The same principle is just replied in reverse.
yeah. Again, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? It's the people who are so used to being 100% all the time. When they find they have like the smallest deviation, that could be in so many different facets. You know, like, you know, say for example, you get training videos, and you know, 9 out of 10 reps are good, but that one rep where maybe, I don't know, their knee quivered or something like that, they're asking for you to, you know, give a full breakdown of what may have happened there. You know,
Yeah.
um, I like specifically for technique. I like Mike Lucier from Reactive Training Systems. Like in one of his one of his courses, he's talking about, like, you know, 8 out of 10 heuristic is it works across pretty much fucking everything, right? If like
Mhm.
8 out of 10 of your reps are like technically sound, you know, they're performed as recommended, that's grand. Like, you know, we don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to like go for the extra 9 or 10. You put that to the same with the likes of your diet, you know. If it's 80%, you know, pretty decent, you know, still kind of hitting most of your metrics. If we have a little bit off, then, you know, we're not going to cry about it. And I guess again, that's the other part of culture, with maybe some people who are maybe a bit more higher strung, or like, you know, they're so used to being like, you know, so dialed in and everything. It's again trying to de-emphasize some of that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
they kind of
Yeah.
they could like the consistency at which you kind of are hitting like your kind of minimum targets, I guess, and like how you can just kind of sustain that over the long term is far more important than like you being just like 100% like intermittently, you know.
The way I like to explain or rationalize it as well is that to clients when they get very short sighted and caught up in those weeks is that the smooth sailing, consistent, bang on weeks that go to plan are what get you the progress. But the stressful, shitty weeks that everything is against you is what keeps your progress. And when you say that, and
Mm,
sometimes like, oh, what do you mean by that? It's like, well, they force you to use your skills, knowledge, self accountability, and discipline to keep your shit together when you're faced with adversity. So that when you do have the smooth weeks, okay, you drop a bit of body fat, you build a bit of strength, you brought up your numbers on whatever, I don't know, your VO2 max or whatever metrics, whatever the goal is, you worked in relationship with food. But when you're faced with things that go against you, that's what's going to re-ingrain those skills, knowledge, and patterns to continue with yourself going forward, which as sure as whatever day it is now, you are going to be faced with again. So to kind of seek an opportunity in that.
mm. Yeah, I think like as a coaching client, like building resilience, and that like is only going to come from like being exposed to those like tougher weeks, those weekends where, you know, you'd probably be better off saying no to maybe engaging in some
Mm.
debauchery. Um, or again, it could be a case of, you know, I don't know, the weather, the training outside, and you don't want to do your steps. Sometimes
Yeah.
it could be, sometimes like that's just a very simple example, but like, you know, it's something that does put people off, especially in
Yeah.
Ireland where, you know, there's no shortage of rain, and we could just throw on a jacket and just be like, I'm gonna get wet, and that's okay. But I'll be a little bit closer to reach my goals
Yeah,
at the end
yeah,
of the week. It might sound like such small things at times, but I think the more often you do those type of things that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable, because of maybe something like in the environment, or during your week, some type of shitty circumstance, when you do it and you actually make the effort, off the back end of it, you can always use that as like evidence for the next thing that pops up.
yeah,
Say, well, I did it last time, so why can't I do it now? You know,
yeah,
uh, you've proven yourself that you can do it, right? Versus like some people like, I wouldn't be able to lose body fat. I wouldn't be able to grow the muscle. I wouldn't be able to, you know. So when somebody sees you eating well, right? Somebody on the outside who's maybe like not eating well themselves, and they see you eating out of lunchbox or eating some vegetables, God forbid, and they're like, oh, I wouldn't be able for that now. That's too healthy for me.
yeah, yeah.
You're like,
So it's
well,
kind of a
maybe,
moral sin.
yeah, maybe if you tried, like, you probably actually break down some of those beliefs.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe if you didn't just boil in water and add a bit of seasoning to your chicken, it wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so well, I'm curious to hear, and I've asked some other people as well who've been on the podcast this question, but like, how do you run your day? What does a day in the life of Lam look like at the moment? So I think it'd be useful for people who are coaches themselves to know how another one structures his day.
Yeah, so my everyone's always interested in when that sounds so pretentious. No one is interested at all, realistically. But no one, Joe, it's like when people put up, they're like, "Oh, everyone's always asking me." No one is asking you. Shut up.
Yeah.
But like when I do put it up, I get up quite early. So like I start check-ins at 4 every day, and the initial reason for that a few years ago is because I was working with a lot of international clients,
Mm,
UAE, Australia, still have a lot of international clients. But what I got back from it is when I started my day at 4, I have most of my check-ins done by early morning. I train, I come back, I eat, I program, I do admin, consults, I program again, and it gives me so much back to my day. Because I realized that like from 7, 8 p.m. on, I'm just up for the sake of it. So I go to
yeah.
bed early, I get up at 4, and it's when I'm most productive. So my day starts at 4. I do a work block from 4, work block one as they call it. I do check-ins, or I do go with a chunk of work from 4 to 6. Walk 6 to about quarter to or 7. Just that's where I use an opportunity to learn. So I have a podcast or an audiobook going during that time. That's about an hour. I come back. I work from about 7 till 10 again. Usually check-ins, getting back to clients, emails, inquiries. I'll train anywhere from like 10 to half 11, 12 by the time I have a post workout, and then I'll come back, and generally from like 12, 1 on until like 4 is just programming consoles, startups. Then from like I'll have my dinner, and then after in the evening, it's more. It could be a mix of programming or kind of maybe a small bit of creative work, content, whatever you want to call it, stuff like that. But that's how
Mm,
I generally break up my day. So I work, walk, work, train, work, consoles, eat.
mm. Yeah, more of the shallow work, I guess, as you call it for
Yeah.
the evening time. Yeah. So what you be in bed by 7? In bed for
No,
7?
I'd be in bed like I'd have to be asleep by 9. Like if I wasn't asleep by
Okay.
9, I'd be like a bag
Yeah.
of shit. So
Yeah.
like generally I'm asleep by 9, and that like don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping out of bed at 4 a.m. when the alarm goes off. Like my alarm is literally set for 3:55, but like I get up. Like I mean the alarm goes off, I get up and I'm straight into check-in straight away.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, everybody listening out there who's like, oh, I can't wait to be an online coach because I can just
Yeah.
wake up
Yeah.
whenever wake up whenever I want.
Yeah, but there's a few caveats to that, I suppose, in that one, I'm used to getting up really early. When I said I worked that career job, I used to have to get up at like 5 a.m. before going to college to collect those letters. So it's like ingrained in me, and I
Mm,
really don't mind getting up early. Obviously, as we know, like chronotypes, I wouldn't naturally be a morning person, but my lifestyle over years has been so pushed
yeah.
towards early morning starts that my days built around it. I just pushed it back earlier. Two, I coach pretty big client base. So for me to get my work done, like I do check in 7 days a week, I don't get up at 4 on the weekend, but I do get up at 5, and I do check-ins on the weekend as well. So in order for me to get the amount of check-ins I need to get done to provide the standard of coaching service that I want to provide, to have time that I want to spend with my family, to train, to operate a business, and to just function, that's why I need to split my day up that way.
Mm, yeah. I it's funny that like when you when you worked as a career job, I'd say you fucking hated waking up at that time. Whereas I can say now when you're waking up at that time, you're like, while I made up not be jumping out of bed,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Well, it's
not bad.
different. I mean,
Yeah,
in winter when you're getting up and you put on a jacket and hat and you're trying to get your gear ready for college so that you can train the same day and you've meals prepped. Whereas literally, I roll out of that bed here, I make a coffee, and then I get onto this desk. I mean, it's not that bad. Like,
yeah. Oh man, well, sure. When I was working as a PT, I worked in Dublin city centre, so like I had to wake up at like 4:30 and I drive in from like Meath into town, and
mm,
yeah, that used to be I used to fucking hate that. Whereas like now I wake up around the same time and I'm like, this is fine.
yeah,
I
it's
walk from
okay.
one bedroom into the next bedroom.
Yeah.
It's a handy way to do it. Um, but yeah, of course, we're like having such a large client base, so you basically do check in 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty intense. It's more than more than I do anyway.
This is a
But
conversation that me and Brian from Triage have very regularly because I train with him the odd time, and
yeah,
I do some strength work with him the odd time, and yeah, he's pushing me to get off the check it. Like my goal, well, I've been saying this for the last years, but my goal is maybe to get like a Sunday without check-ins or a Saturday
mm,
without check-ins. I've reduced them a lot. I used to have anywhere from like as well as like a full day of check-ins, which could be anywhere from 15 to 20 per day from Monday to Friday. I used to have another 10 to 15 on a Saturday and Sunday.
mm,
So, I mean, like at one time, my client number was up at like 125, which for me at the time is when I really saw my limit. And I was like, I
yeah,
can't keep doing that. I was like, oh, that's just fucking insane. Because I genuinely starting to hate coaching. I wasn't being able to think clearly. I was rushing through check-ins, and I really learned that like, okay, I need to taper it back.
mm,
So I found that sweet spot, and I can reduce them down on the weekend to maybe clients. A lot of my weekend check-ins are clients that are coaches as well, where we get into a bit more intricacies of maybe things like programming, or they want more explanations, or their check-ins might require a bit more in depth that I'd have a bit more time to put into their check-ins. So I keep them a bit more minimal. But the goal is hopefully, obviously, like when we move into our house and when we, have a bigger family and stuff, I'm not going to be getting up at 4 and I'm not going to be doing check-ins on the weekend. But I'm okay to make that. I'm not going to say make that sacrifice because again, that sounds pretentious. People have it a lot worse. I'm okay to do it now because I get to and it allows me to, so that I don't maybe always have to do it then.
mm. Would you split up like so? Obviously, you mentioned there towards the weekend you will like kind of prioritize that for check-ins, which maybe take you a little bit more kind of time to go through. Would
Mm.
you like kind of split? I know I'm pretty sure when I was working with Brian, he had some days which were like more check-ins in one day and kind of less check-ins in another, like undulating it. Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, so my only rest day in the week is Wednesday from training. So I put a lot of my check-ins on
Okay.
Wednesday, and I put a few of the meatier check-ins on Wednesday as well. Mornings on the weekend, I will train a bit later. So I will put check-ins that, again, something, for example, if I was coaching someone for a prep or if I was coaching someone for a shoot, and in the final few stages where you're doing check-ins daily or where the frequency of check-ins is going up, or you might have a call with them, I would put those check-ins on the weekend whereby I just have that extra bit of time and not under pressure to just go through it and give them the best feedback I can.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's an important like thing to recognize as you scale. Because like
Mm,
I'd be similar. Like I would keep the majority of my check-ins for days where I am not training, just so that I
mm.
have time to, just so that, well, so I don't feel like I'm rushing through the
Yeah,
check-ins,
yeah.
and feel like I can give them the time they need.
Mm,
But then as well, just even from like from mental point of view, if
mm.
you have a really fucking hard training session, I've had it before where I've gone and done like a hard deadlift session or something like that. Then I come and do check-ins later on that evening, and I'm like, I
Your
feel
skin
like
has to
I
the
have
floor.
brain damage.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing with me when I was coaching that large number of clients is like, I mean, in terms of income and everything, yeah, great, happy days, it all sounds good. But I just found that like, I always find that coaches catch up on the small details. Like if
Mm,
I have a client on a Monday, I know her son's name and I know her son is sick. I know he's going through some stuff. So I try and ask about him when I can. Simple things like that, or if someone has a sick cat or
yeah.
someone, I don't know, they've been through some shit 2 weeks ago and you remember to ask them 2 weeks later. I think clients pick up on that as a bit of a personal touch. So when I start to feel that I can't make clear decisions, and I'm forgetting small details. Now I make notes in every check-in anyway, but when I forget small details or can't remember that I made an adjustment or something, that's when I really started to see that, right, this client number is too high for me. It's not worth the extra income. I'm better off scaling back to offer a better service for less clients.
Mm, yeah, for sure. And I guess like, if there's coaches who are listening to this, like they're like, I guess you have like kind of you've hired like other coaches to help you with probably taking on that like extra inquiries too, right?
Yeah, so I have a coach working with me at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like that's always like avenues that people can go down in the future when they do kind of feel they're kind of reaching a limit. Like I know Emma, like she has two like coaches working for her now, just as she kind of reach her limit. Because
Mm.
yeah, at the end of the day, if you grow a coaching business, because and you've been known for having a good level of detail, being very personable, feel like you're very like invested in people's goals. The last thing you want is for that to start to diminish,
Yeah.
because yeah,
As
I
a
guess
coach, that should be your worst fear.
yeah, that's like, honestly like it's one of those industries where like if somebody gives a bad review in a restaurant or something like that, like there's fucking plenty of restaurants around.
Yeah.
but but if you get a bad review for coaching, like whatever it could be, like it feels like damn, like
Yeah.
I fucked
Yeah.
up with that one. Whereas you really don't want that to happen, because again, especially in the coaching industry, people talk, and
Oh, yeah.
your reputation, if that starts to go, like you know it's gonna be very very difficult to kind of grow or kind of lose any of the maybe kind of bad kind of air that kind of builds up around you. So integrity, number one, as you kind of mentioned
Mm.
towards the beginning of the podcast. um because yeah, I guess it's just keeping that quality high, very very important. Again, it's a person facing job. You don't might
Yeah.
not like face your clients like on a call every week,
Mm.
but remember the small details.
Yeah.
Again, like even when I think about like my coaches, how do I like to be coached? Do I like
Yeah.
to feel as if like they kind of know me or that we have a relationship,
Yeah.
or is it a case that they just send me my program and send me my macros and that's it? you know
Yeah, like
um
you want to build a relationship, you want to be sending your clients stupid cat memes and having a bit of a crack and whatever it is. You don't want to just be this robotic, we're going to drop calories this week and stuff. I think if you build up more of a rapport with your clients, that pays off as well. Like you made a very good point as well in terms of the quality of service. Like I don't have, or in reputation, sorry, like I don't have a huge following. It's not something I desire to chase. It's not something I
mm,
really give a shit about, to be honest. But my books have always been generally full and the business has never struggled, even through COVID, thankfully, because I've solely focused on quality of service and reinvesting back into education, that has in turn led to excuse me, reputation, which has led to referrals. Like my biggest thing is always referrals
yeah.
and retention. The two R's are the biggest thing you should care about with coaching is referrals and retention. So my retention rate is really high and my referrals are really high. So people telling people, if you build up the quality service enough, the business builds itself to a certain point.
Yeah, yeah. It's retention and the referrals is underrated. you
Huge.
know, I so like, a lot of my friends don't like work, like a lot of my like close friends don't work in the fitness industry and like they haven't really got like any kind of like ideas to like how things work, and they would just assume, oh, like you have like whatever 6,000 followers, like you must get loads of people like inquiring through all your reels and stuff like that. I'm like,
I
not
was like,
really, like
oh well.
like not really. Like I mean, it's that's like my shop window. My shop window is just
Yeah.
continually being updated, but like yeah, it's doing a good job with the people you have, and like having them like continually providing good service to them and keeping
Mm.
them there is like the cost of like the effort it takes to acquire one client is way higher than it takes to actually just retain one.
Yeah.
Like most of my clients have been with me for like most of them over a year, and then I have some who've been there since like I started like online coaching, which I feel
Yeah.
very very privileged for.
I
Um,
think something you should always look for as well, bar retention and referrals, which are very important, is something I'm always like very happy to see is like old clients coming back, like especially January
yeah,
now, clients that were with me 2 years ago, or even when I was first coaching and my systems were shite and I didn't know what I was on about and I felt like I wasn't giving a good service, that they're like, oh, I was coached way back then, I really enjoy it. So I'm coming back now. And then that gives me a bit of excitement to be like, okay, well, look what I have in place now. And don't get me wrong, no one signs up to you for your Google Sheets, or no one signs up to you for your logo, no one signs up to you for
mm,
your color scheme. But those things also do add a nice touch when clients that came to you for who you are, which is often what clients buy into, who you are and what you can help them achieve. And now they sign up to you at the moment whereby you've built your business and built your skill set and built your knowledge further.
Yeah, and I think all of that all of this kind of comes back to, again, being being a coach. If you think about coaches of sports teams, they coach a sports team. Like, if you played a sport when you're younger, the coach, like a good coach, would feel like they're invested in you. They feel like they kind of know you. They feel like it just feels like they're there to help you. And like, like if you're playing GAA, like for example, when you're younger, like I never felt like there's any money passing hands.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
pay like your €60 a year to be part of the club, but like the person's just there to like help support you and help, like, kind of nurture you to become like a better fucking younger Gaelic player. And that's kind of like what you're doing, like as a coach in our kind of space.
Mm.
And if that's not something that you kind of feel enjoyment from, there's no obligation to get into coaching, right? Because again, like the money side of things is very attractive. You see business coaches and PTs flaunting, like, fucking, like, leased out Lamborghinis, and like, talking about like these mad amount of money that they're pulling in, which is a very, very small subsect of like the kind of industry too, who are kind of who are
Very quick carousel to be on.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And quite often, so I'm not saying this always happens, but I if you're on the outside looking in, you can just get caught by the lure of that and forget what the job was all about. I like what
100%.
what Luke said at the very start, like, having the impact, having a high impact, and like trying to have that as like the kind of number one. Like that is going to be something that like will kind of have income income coming down the line.
Yeah.
But once you start to prioritize income over impact, and maybe again, ethics become questionable, so you start to backtrack on some values and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's when it's kind of similar to the person who does a 6 week transformation program, and then they're all the way back at the start. You'll get a quick fix.
Mm.
You'll always have like this like revolving door of people coming in, people coming out. Then if you're not providing a good service, again, people will talk, and you might find it hard to get people in the door then later on down the line, and then
Exactly. Yeah.
then
And
what do
that's
you do?
where you always see that well dry up.
Yeah, that's why I guess people, was it 2 or 3 years, and people exit the industry.
Geez, I'd say less. I think it's like 18 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing, I guess, and we probably kind of we probably already kind of fleshed this out, but like, you know, so your company's Integrative Health.
Mm.
So, and you're working with Niall as well, isn't it? Niall
Yeah.
McDermott,
Niles my
Moose,
company. Yeah.
Moose.
Moose.
So I guess like, what would be the kind of mission statement that you have for your company? What would be like the tenets of your coaching that you'd,
I
yeah.
have it on a business card right here.
Oh
So
yeah,
it is results driven health focus built on a framework of education and sustainability.
love it. So health can be a bit ambiguous. So what does that look like for you?
I suppose defining it by not solely just holistic, but like true health, like physical, mental, social, in all aspects. That's why, I mean, if I wanted to get clients really quick results, and if I wanted to get them like shredded, I get them not going out in the weekend. I get them not diversifying their food. I get them just full bro mode. But that's not healthy. I'm sure we can both agree on that. Long term, that's not healthy. So I like to encompass, or I like to incorporate all components of health into the coaching, factoring in social occasions, looking at the mental side of things within a realm that I can help with, or at least know enough about without passing over or crossing over a border. That's not within my means. And then obviously looking at the main objective and subjective markers of health, everything from bloods to general things like biomarkers like resting heart rate, blood pressure, if I know about and can interpret those things. But defining health more than just physical, more than just aesthetic, more than just mental, but as, pardon the pun, one integrated component.
Mm. Yeah, I really like that approach too, because again, I think there can be the overemphasis on the physical part of health.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
it's but one of it. And I think this is where a lot of like disorderly type patterns come in, right? The
Mm.
likes of orthorexia, the likes of, the likes of feeling like, if you don't train, something bad is going to happen,
Yeah.
which these can be definitely problems that you end up facing, or you end up like discovering that maybe somebody's having, who you could be working with, and like trying to, I guess, reduce those top patterns, or even reduce some of those kind of levels of like neuroticism that kind of bake in from it. That type of thing, it can't just come from like bad information being out there. Again,
Yeah,
it could be too much red dye tree in your in your pop tarts as
yeah, exactly.
or whatever like that, or like the fluoride in your water or something like that, kind of leading people into these negative thought patterns. But um, I guess with that, like, so say for example, for using the example there of the bro mode approach to getting shredded, like what would it look like with like a more kind of health focused approach from your side of things? Somebody's looking to get
Well,
shredded now leading up to summer. Just give us an example there.
Well, I'd like to think that all my clients have a health focus approach because, again, I
Yeah.
don't just define health by aesthetics, as I know you don't either. I know the point
Mhm.
you're getting at, but I'd
Yeah.
like to think that every single one of my clients, whether it be that they, no matter what they're goal training for, has a health focus approach because we
Mhm.
look at all of the influencing factors of health on how I would define it anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but if someone was looking to get lean for summer and I wanted to take a health focus approach, I suppose this is something whereby before as well, when I prep people for competitions, I don't do it much anymore. Niall takes a lot of those clients now because he has more experience there than me and he generally enjoys it more than me. But this is something that, like I spoke about there a few minutes ago, I've had to put my own feelings to the side for a client. Like I remember coaching two girls I know for a bikini competition in the UK, and I know they needed to dig really hard to get lean, like very hard in terms of calories and output. And it made me a bit uncomfortable giving those
Mhm.
protocols at the time. I didn't like giving that high cardio. I didn't like seeing how low in energy you were. I didn't like giving that low calories. I didn't like restricting those foods. I didn't like the foods being so boring, but I knew it was necessary for the goal. So that's obviously not healthy. But if someone is looking to just get lean for summer, I suppose the biggest thing for me is not getting greedy with fat loss, knowing where to draw the line. I think it's
Mhm.
so easy to get sucked in and greedy for fat loss, and to do it through a means that's inclusive rather than exclusive. Like if someone comes to me and they're like, "Look, I'm looking to get absolutely diced out of my mind, and I'm willing to do anything to achieve it." Okay, well then you might need a bit more restriction. Or if someone's looking to get in ridiculous thing for a photo shoot, okay, but that's why I have, let's say, not a disclaimer, but an agreement with clients that if they are to prep for photo shoot, they have to stay on board for 4 weeks afterwards because we need to do a proper reverse. And I make sure to clear that up at the
Mhm.
start of the consultation. Simple things like that. Like when I do a photo shoot prep for a client, I don't coach them to just finish the photo shoot. I will not coach you for a photo shoot.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm prepping you that way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as I said there at the very start, like having or removing your bias from the equation, and then also not getting greedy with the situation too. And that could even be from the coach's perspective,
Yeah.
you know. Like obviously my background doing bodybuilding and like powerlifting, right? So I have my views of what like lean and like strong are like completely unrealistic to like the
Yeah.
majority of people. So when somebody says I want to get lean, I really need to understand what that means for them. Like, how does that look? Do they have any
Mm.
examples of them being that lean, or even I don't like an example of what it could look like body on a body fat chart, for example.
Yeah.
um because I understand how I would operate for me with that goal,
Mm.
but as you said, with your more kind of like with a more holistic approach to it, it's understanding what that levels of expectation that person's expectation is, and kind of the things they're willing to do, the things they're willing to give up, and the things that they're not. Because
Mm.
that incorporates the other kind of aspect of health, which a lot of people do have, right? It's like the social, the relationship kind of aspect of health, where for some people, if you say, um, or some people you don't say it to them, they'll just say, you know what, I'm just going to reduce the amount of times I go out to eat the weekend,
Mm.
and you're like, fine, right? If that doesn't have an impact on you, doesn't have a negative impact on you, by all means do it if you find it makes the process easier, okay?
Yeah.
But if somebody's like going out to eat at the weekend is something I do with my family, like I do with my friends, like part of like when I see people, when I socialize, then it's kind of like, all right, well that's obviously an important part of like your mental well being because you're going off to spend time with people, or whatever. How do we kind of incorporate that in? Okay, like
Yeah.
can we still incorporate that in without having to make like major adjustments, or is there even ways that we can make some slight alterations if that was maybe a part of the process which has been detracting you from getting to go, right? Like teaching them maybe some skills around how to like manage portion control without tracking, eyeballing food, just like simple things is like if you're done eating your food, and but the plate's not finished, like put your napkin over the plate or something like that, just to hide it from your kind of
Not
from
being
your line
afraid to leave some food there. Such
yeah
an
from your
Irish
line
thing.
yeah from your line of vision. Just things like that like can still incorporate like what you're wanting, while giving you what you need, but also still not infringing on other aspects or behaviors which can become detrimental. Because the last thing you do want, I guess, or the last thing like I want as a coach as well, is like if my client can feels like the only way that they can lose fat in the future is by just restricting like social events, restricting like everything under the sun. Like, of course, they're gonna have to restrict calories. Like, there's no
Mm.
doubt about
Yeah.
that. But
That's often
it's
the common thought process is
yeah,
even like it would take away the fitness bubble effect or the filter bubble effect of like in-depth fitness industry, but just losing a few pounds or quote unquote being healthy, people often look to what they must stop first. Like New Year's
mm,
resolution is January. It's currently the 24th of January. I can guarantee you a lot of people that said they're not going out the weekends at the start of January have now started to go on the piss. So
mm,
it's people perceive that in order for me to get to point X, I must do Y, and Y is just necessary built off restriction. I cannot do this. And this is something I try and teach my clients as well. When I spot, like I'm big on language and terminology in a check-in sheet. So I like to pick up on how people say things because I feel like that reinforces how they,
mm,
I suppose, view it and believe it. So when someone says, "Oh, let's say I didn't go out for food in the weekend because let's say if they check in and if they say they didn't go out for food in the weekend and if they view that as a huge celebration, I like to first play devil's advocate and say, okay, well, it's good you made a choice in line with your goals, but I hope you're viewing that as you went and decided that you won't go and have food, not that you can't. Because the difference between saying I can't and I won't is
mm,
often what people struggle with. I can't implies that you're implying just an association of guilt and wrongdoing, that situation of not knowing the exact calories of that situation of eating out is immediately against the grain of your goal. I won't is I'm making a choice in line with the decision of my goal right now. So differentiating between those two is very important. But if I have someone who checks in, they're like, and this is a guy I coach on Wednesday, and it's a very common example. We're working on him learning to say no more around alcohol because he struggles with it a lot. If he checks in, he says, my girlfriend had her family around. They all offered me a few drinks, and I said no, and I'm really happy with that decision because I genuinely didn't want to. Cool, that's a win. Yeah. But if he checked in, he was like, oh, I really wanted to go out Saturday, but I couldn't, then that's a different conversation.
yeah. Again, that comes around to developing the unhealthy mindsets around it's just different. The alcohol there in that situation is the exact same as the same person be like, I can't have a donut because it has sugar in it.
Yeah,
It's just replacing one for the other, and it's like
yeah,
you want the inclusive like mindset is so much more important to have. Again, you hear all the time, dose makes a poison, all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Moderation. All these different cliches, but they're true. And I guess when you're kind of like coaching, when you're coaching people, you're trying to break down as many of these like kind of negative beliefs around
yeah.
foods, ingredients, uh, you know, maybe societal norms, like the likes of binge drinking, for example, in Ireland.
Peer groups, stuff like
Uh,
that. Yeah,
yeah. Trying to give people a little bit of agency or control in them. I think as you kind of mentioned there with the like your client who maybe struggle to say no. A lot of people struggle with that. It could be saying no to food, saying no to nights out, saying no like to like again it could be just a food like a family occasion, for example.
I
Um,
suppose within again the realm that we can investigate and help it without going down too dim to like a psychologist route.
yeah.
Like we identified for him that for some people with food, it can be that they perceive the food is inherently against the grain of their goal, or maybe they have a negative outlook on the composition of the food, or maybe they've been taught differently. Again, I have another client, and she struggled with her relationship with food quite a lot, and we identified that that came from her family home and her mom always commenting on the portion she was having and the type of food she was eating. You're never going to eat all that. Jesus, surely that's too much for you to eat at once. These type of comments that might not necessarily come in harm, but they do have an effect. Whereas we identified for the guy that it's just a case that he just is afraid for people to judge him, and he feels like
Yeah.
he constantly needs to people please. All of his friends are big drinkers. He's not a big drinker. Therefore, he feels like he needs to constantly say yes. And the only way we have had success with him, well, dropping body fat now from controlling his alcohol, improving his sleep metrics and all the stuff, is from him just getting us small but uncomfortable, saying no once or twice, and then learning that next week none of his friends have left and they're still going to be there. If they are his true friends, that they're still going to be like, look, you coming out Saturday? No, okay, he's not coming out. Cool, no worries, you know?
Mm, yeah, definitely. I'm sure a harder one to navigate than a lot of other ones. Like
Oh yeah,
the
like
saying
that's
no
a
with
coaching
around it.
situation where like
Yeah,
that's an entire day back and forth. That's touching base on the weekend. That's definitely more in depth as you know yourself. That's not
yeah,
just a Loom video and no adjustments. That's a deeper conversation where again, and the only way I was able to pick up on that is by certain ways he said things in a check-in that I was like, let me just question that a bit more. Let me just ask him a few questions, shut up and listen, see what he says, and see what comes out of it. And then
mm,
I can kind of identify or try and identify what the trigger is for him on the weekends and why he feels like he can't say no and why alcohol is affecting him so much. And you just get into a bit of a deeper conversation, but I'll always try and draw a line where if I see that it's something very in depth or like, if he came back and there's I don't know, some type of maybe tendency of abuse or something, that's not my forte. That's not what I do. And I'd have to obviously try and outsource there.
yeah, yeah. Being able to recognize your scope is obviously a very important part of the job. I guess understanding the scope, but at the same time, like you need to be able to have the conversation still with some people with some of your clients because there's gonna be stuff that is far beyond our scope to help somebody with. But I think, say for example, right, in the context of even somebody getting injured, right, there's gonna be some advice that you can give your client to maybe overcome a niggle or some type of
Mm.
injury, give them some kind of graded plan. It's not giving it in the confidence of a physio. You're not going to give it with a physio's level of advice. But if you get to the point where they're having a fucking grade four fucking hamstring there, you're not gonna be like, right, we're just gonna start off at walking here, right? You probably start referring out, and
Yeah.
it's the same with so somebody in that context, right? Like if it's an issue with like food or mindset related to like something like alcohol or like engaging in social situations, I think when the problem is more severe, it can be a little bit kind of easy to pick up on because the behaviors tend to like cluster around lots of different habits and behaviors,
Mm.
and there typically can be a lot kind of bigger swings between good and bad weeks to being very very bad weeks, and then almost people being like uncontactable to a degree. And I think in those kind of situations, it's probably just easier to let the person know that what, still here to support you, but at the same time, I do think we can get support from like an outside source, and
Yeah.
if you have a network of people that you trust, which I think
Mm.
is one of the really important parts of coaching, and this is coaching should be something where you're able to have a conversation with other coaches. Like we're able to have a conversation here. Like we both work in the same industry, but there's plenty of people out there to help, and there's plenty of other people there who we can platform and kind of help other people too who have bigger skill sets than ours, and we're meant to network with people, grow our kind of grow our link, right? So that if we do have that kind of situation pop up where somebody's struggling and we don't have the skill set to help them, I can pass them on to somebody who's going to be able to help them better. 'Cause
Yeah.
that comes back to I guess, having the client at the center of the coaching.
Yeah.
It's I'm not coaching the person because they're paying me a certain amount per month. They're here to have a problem solved, and if I can't solve that problem for them, that I don't have the skill set, either if I can learn that skill set, I will. But if it's something that requires a greater, or like a very, very great skill set,
Yeah.
it's in the person's best interest to like that care that's needed.
I think that comes with maturity in general and experience in coaching. Like I regularly consult with and chat with again Brian from Triage now because he's obviously so well versed with like CBT and relationship with food, and I've referred many clients onto him. I had a consultation with one guy on the phone, and there's a few things like I got off the phone call and I was like, yeah, I can help this guy. And then when I saw his consultation form, I was like, I can't help this guy. So like I immediately sent him on to Brian, and he's actually doing really well at Brian now, which is great to hear. But like I couldn't, like if someone came to me and they were like, oh, if one of my clients immediately turned around in the morning, they're like, I want to, I don't know, drop a bit of body fat and I'm thinking about powerlifting federations. I'm going to give you a message and like, here, look, what are good powerlifting federations that this guy can go for? But if they
Mm.
turned around to me and said, okay, now I want to actually become a powerlifter, here's Shane's number. And I wouldn't be afraid to do that. Like, again, I've started getting into the realms of endurance and high rocks and stuff this year. I've done a few myself. And one of my clients done her first few, and I helped her with her nutrition for it. She was doing marathons, and I was helping her quote unquote peak for these events so that she could perform at her best. And then she turned around like, right, I actually want to take this really seriously and train, like actually like go well in high rocks.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, you need to. I sent her some coaches' names. I was like, I can't take you there. Do you know, like I mean, I can
Yeah.
take you as far as here, but I'm not one experienced enough or two confident enough to be honest in my programming for high rocks to coach you fully to become like to get the times you wanted
Yeah.
individuals and stuff like that, you know. And for me, a lot like this is one thing that I've always said it, the two hardest things to say as a coach are no and I don't know.
Yeah.
And when you learn to say those more as a coach, your service will become better, you will earn more, and you will learn to love your job more.
Mm. Yeah. Absolutely. They're things that take a bit of humility
Yeah,
to say as well, you know. You know, you like as much as we could maybe try to frame ourselves as to be like experts when maybe we're having a social media post like, you know, fat loss expert or whatever like that, strength
yeah.
expert. Um, you know, you only realize how fucking stupid you are until you talk to like a real expert.
Oh, like I remember when speaking on like when I said I invested heavily into programming and stuff, like I've done a few courses and stuff like that, spent years investing into it, but I remember when I thought I knew about programming and I went over to the UK to actually, it was the muscle mentors at the time, but I went over to Paul and
Oh yeah.
James and I went to an exercise mechanics seminar. I went to a few of them, but the first one I went to, and I sat down and I immediately came out in the first day and I was like, I am an absolute dumb shit when it comes to this stuff. Like they're on about moment arms and torque and resistance profiles and lines of pull and, you know, pineal orientations. And I was like, I thought it had to be about sets and reps and what exercise you
Mm,
pick. You know, and I was sitting there and I was like, but I kind of like that in a way because I came away from that. I was like, right, now I need to know this. Now I
yeah.
have to be able to, when I'm making that exercise choice, why is that there? Why am I picking pin loaded over plate loaded? So I think you have to put in those situations as a coach where like, because it's easy to get a big head as a coach. You can earn a good bit per month. You get clients in your shape. There's so little skill to that. The barrier has
Mm,
never been so low in coaching. So it's easy to get a big head and run away with yourself when you start to earn a bit of earn some money and get some clients in shape. But when you're placed in situations that you don't know the answer to, or you have to outsource and put your ego to the side, that's where I feel like you'd truly transition from this as a side hustle to a career.
mm. Yeah, and you learn a lot like in those kind of situations well from being wrong. Um,
Yeah,
you know, because well again, like you're gonna learn the best way through kind of making mistakes because you have that experience of what definitely didn't work, and then you're gonna investigate hopefully off the back of that what will work that little bit better. I kind of had kind of similar. Like I remember when I was I did prescript last year. I want to do prescript level 2 now this year.
oh yeah, I did level two
Um,
last year. It's really good.
um, but I at that point already done like, you know, a load of like the Muscle Mentors content and everything, and you know been looking at stuff for a few years. Then I was like I was doing a lecture with like Killian, like a few of them, like across the actual course. I was
Mm,
like, Jesus Christ, like just like this guy, I feel like he's speaking a different language, even though
I
like, you
know.
know, I'm
Yeah,
picking up on some of these words here.
yeah,
But it's actually like when you're kind of in that process where you're like, geez, I actually feel like I just have so much more to still learn here. And then you actually spend some time actually reflecting. Like I think it's one important part of like I guess the education process as a coach. It's not just like watching the lecture. It's not just like, you know, turning up for the course but it's like actual like reflecting on stuff, revising stuff. Every time I come back to like that information that makes sense that little bit more. And even like when I'm doing my own training, like if I'm learning about something new, I'll try to like incorporate or try to think about it a little bit more. Maybe I'm
yeah.
like looking at clients training videos a little bit differently or stuff like that. And like over time, you just like again, you're building up that skill set a little bit more. You're becoming a bit more proficient in that part of your job. And geez, it's a game that never seems to end. You know, with anybody who I look up to, like from the educational standpoint in the industry, is always leveling up. They're always
Yeah.
trying to continue to learn
And
more.
the
And
best way to continue to level up, I think, I think you have to meet in the middle between not being too much of a nerd, but actually applying it as a coach as well.
yeah,
Like always, the best way I reinforce things that I learn is through problem solving. For example, the client came to me last Friday, and I had told him to go to a physio because he was suffering with some like overhead mobility issues, and he just was having some upper body trouble. So he got quote unquote diagnosed with a winged scapula. So through the pre-skip level 1, level 2, I was confident that right, we need to work on upper rotation, we need to work on strengthening some of his, we need to work on posterior compression of his breathing. We need to work on setting his scapula in place more. So I just altered a few of his movements, brought in a landmine press, brought in some reverse shrugs, brought in some dips, um, focused on some breathing exercises before the session, and immediately checked in this week. He's like, yeah, it feels way better already. Now, there can be a bit of a placebo effect to that because maybe because I told him I was doing certain exercises to help improve his wing scapula, there it can ingrain this placebo effect,
mm,
but the symptoms of discomfort had improved. However, I would not have said to him, "Oh, these are the symptoms you're feeling. That is a wing scapula," because that's not my place to say. But
yeah,
I was only because I just have the books there, pull them out, look for the chapter I want to see. Okay, here's how we solve this issue, and that reinforces more to me how to learn. So that's always the thing that my point at the start of this was I feel like you do need to invest back in education. You need to constantly be learning, doing courses, books, whatever it is. But there's no use of all that if you don't actually apply it every day with
yeah,
coaching and solving problems.
mm, yeah, massively. And even with that, I'm sure another thing with the application process, it's like I'm sure you didn't look at the exercise in the book or just like, okay, this is like the recipe. You're probably
It was
thinking
just
more
the
about,
principles. It was the
yeah, the
principles.
principles. That's it. You're
Yeah.
thinking about like what's the principles behind this, because I think that can be where people will get like mixed up in those processes. It's just thinking about, okay, to fix my back, I just need to do like the big ill like big ill big
Maybe
tree,
big tree.
you know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and you just think about, okay, like, well, what are we actually trying to achieve here? And like it's like the big kind of thing that we're trying to get from, I guess, the education process as a coach is like there's only so often that you're going to need to use some of the information that you know,
Yeah.
but it's knowing when to use it. You know, it's like I remember hearing. I think it was like just like a fucking like a Twitter meme that I seen go around as some guys complaining about like a plumber coming in to like fix a sink or something like that, and all he did was like come in and like twist a knob and then it like fixed the leak, and that was like, why is my bill here like for a thousand euro?
Yeah.
I was like, oh well, like I want a notarized I want a notarized receipt with like having all the breakdown of like the expenses, and it was all
Yeah.
like the whatever, like the equipment, like a labor cost, and then it was like the biggest one was like knowing which screwdriver to use to fix the thing, and like that's what it comes down to. Because like again, if you have one person like a coach, right, who's coming in and they just have the hammer, right, to fix your problem. That's all they've ever known. Maybe they've
But
got a
they know how to
screwdriver
swing
if
it
you're
is the
lucky,
thing.
and then you have the guy who's coming in with this fucking Black and Decker toolkit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who's going to be the one who's best equipped for you?
Yeah. And the thing is with that problem, like that's the first, I think maybe second time I've ever had to refer back to like for that specific issue of a wing scapula, but similar situation like where I needed to change the position and parameter of loading of a lunge pattern for a client because they're presenting with some like compensations elsewhere and some pain. So I just
Mm,
changed from like a bilateral load to anterior load to push their center of mass back, which then had them experience a bit less pain in the knee. And that was helping solve their problem in tune with their physio. But again, it's very rare. Like it's not like on a daily basis I'm using these things every day. Very, very rarely. It's just knowing that I have those tools in the kit when the problem does need to be solved.
mm. Yeah, it is. It's where spending all that money on the education starts to become very valuable because you can show your value to other
Yeah,
people then. Um, Lam, thank you very much for your time. I think we've been chin wagging here for plenty of time, provided plenty of value, I think. Um,
hopefully.
do you want to let people know where they can find out more about your services?
So yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm very late to the party, and I don't think I'm attending anytime soon with TikTok and Twitter. I'm literally just on Instagram. So at Lom on Instagram. That's it. Underscore LOM double underscore. Very awkward username. Need to try and change it. Website is ihcoaching.ie. So www.ihcoaching.ie. That's where you can find out all about what we do, myself and Niall, what we offer the clients, testimonials, case studies, all that stuff. Um, and I also run coaching seminars once or twice a year. Information on those will be on the website as well. We're doing one more this year at the back end of the year. We're in the middle of organizing now. So all that information can be found on there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to link all of that in the description. But yeah, go over and check out Luke's Instagram and check out his website. Wouldn't have him on the podcast if I didn't think that he was somebody worth platforming and kind of sharing all his thought processes and everything around coaching. So yeah, if you did enjoy the podcast, make sure to give a rating or review on the podcast platform that you're listening on. It does help the podcast to grow. And yeah, we will catch you in the next one.